this is Sean McGowan for Acoustic Guitar. Welcome to this weekly workout. This is called True Independence, and we're going to be taking a look at all kinds of ways to build independence as well as synchronization between the picking and fretting hands. So let's just dive right in on this. So in week one, we're going to start off with a wonderful finger switching exercise that's illustrated in example 1. This one's great. What you'll notice right off the bat is that none of these exercises really constitute scales per se. There are a lot of different movements that you can do that will really facilitate independence as well as synchronization without ever having to play a scale. Scales are great, but I think many guitar players only have a scale routine or maybe an arpeggio regimen, and there are different things that we can do that not only promote physical independence but also some musical articulation and dynamics and things of that nature. So let's take a quick look at example 1. In the first week here, we're going to focus on the fretting hand. For most of us, that would be the left hand, but we're just going to drop the fretting hand in 5th position on the guitar neck, and the first finger is going to be playing a D on the 5th fret A string. And then you're just going to kind of like fan out fingers 2, 3, and 4 on frets 6, 7, 8 on the next string. So we're going to be basically fretting the 5, 6, 7, 8 on strings 5, 4, 3, 2. Okay? That's our starting pattern there. Okay, now you don't have to worry about anything with the picking hand, but this is a great initial warm-up with the claw. If you're playing fingerstyle, just lightly rest your thumb, index, middle, and ring fingers on each of those strings respectively, and just get used to plucking them. Okay, so now we don't have to worry about the picking hand. So what the fretting hand is going to do essentially is what I call a finger exchange, where 2 fingers will trade places while the other 2 fingers will stay down. So the first finger exchange, as illustrated in the music here, is we're going to swap out 1 and 2. So they're just simply going to trade places. And then, so now the middle finger is down on the A string, and the index finger is now up on the 5th fret D string. And they simply trade places. Now while you do this, 3 and 4 stay down. So that's the initial movement, just feeling that finger exchange. And then if we want to take it to the next level, we can focus on articulation. So the 2 fingers that are trading places can be played very short and staccato. And that's achieved by simply releasing the pressure in these 2 fingers while fingers 3 and 4 stay fretted down. So you don't even have to leave the strings. It's just simply like release the pressure and then swap. So 1 and 2 are exchanging, but there's also a difference in articulation because the 2 fingers that are staying down are long and legato and sustained, and the 2 fingers that are trading are staccato. So what you want to do is just gradually go through all of the permutations. The next one would be 1 and 3. This one is a little harder because now each finger, 1 and 3, has to travel over the D string, so it makes it a little more difficult. But this is what we want to go for. Just a nice staccato versus legato articulation. Then the next permutation would be 1 and 4. Then 2 and 3. Then 2 and 4. Finally 3 and 4. So we have. And so on. So what I would recommend is a wonderful warm-up. Just do each of these finger exchanges maybe twice or 4 times or even 8 times if you're feeling like really digging in. And while you're doing this, make sure to keep stretching, your fretting hand. Just, I like to make sure that the fingers are warmed up. You've got some blood flow in the hand. You can shake it up to warm it up, but make sure to stretch your fingers so you don't get any cramps while you're doing this exercise. It's tricky at first, so take your time with it, but you'll notice huge rewards when you do this, even just a little bit as part of your warm-up. All right, let's move forward to example 2. This is a really cool exercise. I actually learned this exercise many, many years ago from the liner notes of an Andre Segovia record, and this is one of his favorite exercises. And it's an octave exercise that moves through the chromatic scale. So if you pay close attention to the fingerings in the music, basically we're starting with a low E in an octave, and we're going to finger that with a middle finger. Then we're going to move up through the chromatic scale in octaves. So when we finger the F, that's going to be 1 and 3. And then F sharp will be 2 and 4. So that's basically the pattern: open, middle, and then 1, 3, 2, 4. And with your, with your picking hand, you can do this finger style using thumb and first finger, or middle finger, or if you're playing hybrid with a thumb pick or a flat pick, just use whatever finger you have available. We're focusing right now on the fretting hand, so you just want to kind of always keep that posture as if you were holding a ball or an orange. If you're going to squeeze into that orange, your middle finger eventually will meet up with your thumb, and your hands have this kind of nice curvature to them, as if you're holding a ball in there. And that's what your hand wants to look like when you're on the fretboard. So we've got a E, 1, 3 on F, 2, 4 on F sharp. Then we slide over 1, 3 on G, 2, 4 on G sharp. And then we repeat that same pattern on the next string set, the A and G strings. So if we're going to play this slow, it would be like. Now when we get up to the G string, that's going to be open and third finger, 1 and 4, slide 1 and 4 up, and then come back down. So take it nice and slow. The goal obviously isn't speed, it's independence and being able to come up with those fingerings, but it's a really great exercise to get you going. Okay, and our final exercise in this first week, we're looking at example 3 now, and this is a really cool exercise that will definitely help all facets of your guitar playing, whether you're playing rhythm or soloing or just playing a lot of solo fingerstyle guitar. This will again really promote independence, but also dynamics and articulation. So we're going to start off with a real basic C major 7 chord. That's illustrated. The first measure of example 3. Now, when I think of these notes on each string, I kind of think of 4 voices, right? That's how I imagine it. So you just imagine, your lowest note is the bass. The G in this case would be like maybe a tenor voice. The B with the middle finger would be your alto. And then your pinky is going to play the melody up. That's like your soprano voice. So imagine a vocal score, SATB, right? So what we want to do is have the independence available in each finger so that one of those notes, or maybe even more than one note, can sustain and ring out while the other 2 or 3 pop and have a staccato. So if you look at the notation, in the first measure, we're going to hold that E, which is fingered by the pinky, right? And that's the soprano. So what we're going to do is just release fingers 1, 2, and 3. So it's going to sound like this. And just let that E ring on as if a singer were holding a long note. And the other voices are just bop, bop. Repeat that a few times. Then in the second measure, now the alto, the B is going to ring. So now you're holding down the middle finger while 1, 3, and 4 pop. The next measure has the G or the tenor voice ringing. So now the third finger is staying down. And then finally the bass or the C will stay held down. Maybe do each of those measures 4 times to really kind of, pass it around, pass the long note around with the fingers. If you do each of these 3 examples regularly every day, because consistency is the key, you will notice a big increase in your ability to finger certain, difficult melodic lines or difficult chords. You'll just be amazed at how much strength and facility that you'll develop in a short amount of time. All right, let's move on to week 2. So now, in this week, we're going to focus on the picking hand. So for most of us, it's the right hand, left hand if you're a lefty. And what we're going to do this week is focus on what I call the pinch technique. A lot of people call it the pinch technique. And that's basically just using the thumb in tandem with one finger, usually the index finger. But you could also use your middle finger. And again, depending on all these exercises can be played fingerstyle or with a thumb pick or a flat pick. You just use whatever remaining finger that you have left on the picking hand to articulate that other note. So let's take a quick look at example 4. If we think about the picking hand and the ways that we can articulate two or more notes, we essentially have two options or two choices. We can play the two notes together, or we can play them apart. And we want to build facility and independence with both. So starting off with example 4, we have a basic C chord. You can do this exercise with any chord, and if you start getting burned out with that C major sound, you can plug this in. But what we're doing now is keeping the thumb just steady rolling on that bass, while the index finger, or you could use your middle finger if you like, is going to be playing that little arpeggio line above it. So we've got. So I'm just using a pinch technique with my thumb and index finger. This is kind of like what I think of as a West African guitar technique, which is borrowed from a kora technique. They can make so much music with just the thumb and middle, or thumb and index finger. It's amazing. Or thumb and middle if that's more comfortable. Try both and see what you like. But that's what's happening. Both notes are happening at the same time. And the index finger is traveling across the strings while the thumb is just holding the bass down. Now in example 5, we have a little more movement because now the bass is moving. So now this will train your thumb to start switching strings. Very similar to a Kentucky thumb style Merle Travis technique here, Mose Rager, all of those players. So we'd have now in this example. So now we're building some synchronization between both hands. Real simple lines. But the idea, the goal is to get that thumb on autopilot so it can go wherever it needs to. All right, in example 6, now we're going to split up the notes. So we're going to play the thumb and the pinch on different beats. So we're still staying with our basic C shape, and now example 6 will be. Very simple. Blues pattern, like Elizabeth Cotton kind of thing. And if you wanted to, mix, you can mix any of these examples up and elaborate on them. Maybe one of the first things you want to do next is alternate the bass between C and G. Something like. So now with these 3 examples, we've played the pinch together and then apart. So now, moving on to example 7, we're going to just keep that bass rolling with the thumb on the same string, that C, but now we're going to widen our arc with our pinch. So the first finger can go all the way up to the high E string and back down, as in the example. Or, again, if you like, you can mix and match fingers. So, another thing. Well, let me demonstrate. Here's just with the first finger. First finger's going all the way across the strings. Or you can try it with just the middle. Or you can use a combination that maybe this would be more comfortable for you as you're, increasing your arc. Maybe swap out fingers. So start with the index and then maybe move to the middle finger on the G string, and then maybe even your ring finger on the high strings, the high E and B strings, maybe something like this. Etc. Just try all of those variations and be comfortable with playing them all. All right, so now moving on to example 8. Now we have something that's starting to resemble kind of a song accompaniment. If you're playing like in the style of Paul Simon or any of your favorite blues players, now we've got a moving bass, and the articulations are still, a pinch moving across the strings on the off beats. So example 8 is. That's a simple exercise that you can add a lot of variations to if you like. All right, taking a look at example 9. Now this is kind of a fun thing to do with the pinch technique. It's playing basically a 2 against 3 rhythm. So it's almost like it's approaching like a polyrhythm, But what we're doing is we're just keeping that steady bass with the thumb, with the C, but our melody line is playing quarter note triplets against that. So we have a 3 against 2 feel. So that's going to sound something like this. Now, if you noticed, if you go back and watch this a few times, if you look at my picking hand, I tried a bunch of different fingerings for that just to explore it. So I tried doing it all with just the middle finger with the 3 rhythm, all with the index finger, so keeping that pinch. But then what I was doing at the end there was basically doing like index and middle alternating strokes between index and middle and index and ring. So all of those things I invite you to explore because they'll all make your picking hand much stronger. Okay, and finally in example 10 for this week, you can also play scales, but what I think is a little more interesting and more fun is to play 2 notes, like double stops, right? So in this example, we're exploring both thirds, playing a C major scale, or you can take any scale, and play it in thirds, and you'll be using that pinch technique. And then finally, in the second measure, spread out to tenths. So a tenth is just a third plus an octave. So we're going to go up and down the C major scale, starting in thirds, and then tenths. So what this does is it requires you to play, 2 adjacent strings and then, kind of more of a spread with the right hand. So this is another invitation to explore different techniques with the right hand. You might want to just use a pinch with a thumb and index or a thumb and middle for those thirds, right? I kind of go back and forth between using the middle and the index. But then when you get to the tenths, you might want to, explore using the middle and then maybe even the thumb with the ring finger. And just have fun exploring those. All right, so in this week, we're still going to be focusing on the picking hand and also some synchronization with the fretting hand. But now we're going to introduce the claw. So the claw, I think as most of us understand it, is basically using more than one finger in tandem with the thumb. So a claw could be thumb, index, and middle, or if you're thinking about classical nomenclature, P, I, M, A. So you've got P-I-M, or even a full claw would be P-I-M-A. So you've got 3 fingers in tandem with the thumb. So that would be a claw as opposed to the pinch, which would be 2 notes. All right, so let's just take a quick look at the chords that we'll be using in example 11. And I also think that this is just a great warm-up. The very first thing that you want to do, especially if you're new to fingerstyle, is just learning to feel the fingers and thumb on the strings. So if we start with a C major, what you're doing is planting in advance. So the thumb is resting on the 5th string, the index is on the 4th, middle on the 3rd, and then the ring finger up on the B string or the 2nd string, right? So go get those in place, and you want to get to the point where you can just drop your picking hand right onto those strings, and they'll always fall in the string set and be ready to grab it. So you fall in, pluck, fall in, pluck. And that's also, for example, if you're new to hybrid style with a flat pick and fingers, now you're going to have to use the pinky to do with that. So that might be a little strange feeling or weird at first, but you'll be able to do that. Just drop them in there, and then I don't have a pick, but you can imagine if I had a pick here. But importantly, I'm using the pinky in there. So just try those. That would be your introductory or your preparatory exercise. Just feeling the strings, placing them with the picking hand, and then plucking them all together in a claw. So you can do that with these first chords. We've got C major 7, D minor 9, and then a G7 flat 13. Now this is nice because now you notice the thumb drops down to the low E string. So already you're getting your, your placement and your plucking together. So you can try that exercise a few times as a warm-up. Now, starting with example 12A, what we're going to do is something that I call splits, and we're going to basically split up the fingers and the thumb, or we're going to split up the claw in different ratios. So we're going to start off with what I call a 1-to-3 ratio. So we have one note by itself followed by 3 notes together. So we're just going to take that simple C major 7 in example 12A and just isolate the thumb from the claw. So we've got... You can make that C note long or short, or both of them short. Now in example 12B, we're still using our 1-to-3 ratio, but we've got a different note out front. So now we're going to begin with the G, which will be plucked with the index finger, followed by the other 3 notes in the chord, which will be plucked by the thumb, middle, and ring. So now this is going to, take it up a notch in terms of the challenge. This might be something that you're not accustomed to doing, so take it real slow. So index, claw, index, claw. And it's something that you just kind of put on autopilot. Once I think you get the movement in your fingers and in your hands, it gradually builds up as muscle memory, and you won't even have to think about it, which is great, because when you go to play and you want to improvise a right hand pattern or a picking hand pattern, if you're playing with a singer or you're singing yourself, you won't have to think about it. It'll just be there in your hands. All right, looking at example 12C, now we've got the 1-to-3 ratio still, but now we're putting the top note on the voice in the E, which is articulated with the ring finger on the picking hand. That's going to lead it, followed by thumb, index, middle. So. And so forth. So maybe you want to set up a regular exercise where you're exploring all of those ratios and in time. So do each measure 2 times or 3 times or 4 times, just repeating it, and that'll be a really great warm-up. Moving on to example 13A, now we have a G13 chord with the fretting hand, and we're going to do a 2-to-2 ratio, so we're going to split up the notes in pairs. So the first pair will be the thumb and index together doing a pinch, followed by the middle and ring together. So we've got... And make sure each pinch is really accurate. It's not a... you're not buzzing, you're getting nice, clear. So start real slow. Try to get it as close as you can, or as accurate as you can. Just imagine 2 singers singing. And then finally in example 13B, we also have a 2-to-2 ratio, but now we're playing these 2 notes articulated with the thumb and middle, and then the index and ring finger are paired. So we have... And then finally moving on to example 14A, B, and C, we're doing a 3-to-1 ratio. So we're starting with the claw followed by a single note. So in 14A, we've got a D minor chord. We're doing thumb, middle, thumb, index, middle, followed by the ring finger. 14B, now the middle is on its own. And then finally in 14C, the index finger is on its own. Not only is this a great exercise that will promote facility and dexterity and independence, but most importantly, it's a great musical exercise. I mean, if you just look at the music, you can see how the melody changes, right? In the first example, we've got, and then 14B, it's the opposite. And then in 14C, the melody is kind of like, you hear by splitting up the fingers in these different ways, all of these new melodies will come out. So I really invite you to explore this technique with any song that you have in your repertoire, instead of defaulting to like a strumming pattern or a typical Travis pattern or whatever you're used to playing with. Try some of these different variations with a picking hand And you'll notice that, you know, your guitar playing will sound really strikingly different and very interesting, that will accompany your voice, or will be interesting in any musical situation. So take those nice and slow and have fun with it. All right, we've made it to week 4. All right, so I thought it would be fun to just put together a fun little musical piece that really brings everything together in terms of the fretting, hand fingering, and staccato, little bounce technique, as well as the pinch and claw together. So what we're going to do is play a little blues riff. This is kind of in a Kansas City style jump blues. And what I mean by that is that if you imagine, if you know that style of music, you've got this nice continuous walking bass line with these little chord pops in there that the piano player, like imagine Count Basie doing that, or the horns, you know, just doing these little horn shouts. So how about this? I'll play the example that's written in example 15, and then I'll just add a quick couple of notes to it. So here we go. A 1, 2, a 1, 2, 3, and... that over and over again. All right, so just a couple of quick notes of what's happening. So the bass line is nice and smooth, and that's going to be played with the thumb the whole time. So we've taken our techniques to the next level with moving that thumb between the A and the low E strings. And with the fingers of the left hand, we're using that bounce technique, or that staccato, because we have independence. And you'll notice that based on what the bass line is doing, you might have to change up your fingering in the chord a little bit. So that's something that you just have to explore and experiment with. But just take a look at the very first measure of example 15. We've got a C9 chord. I think most of us would finger it like this, low to high, 2, 1, 3, 4, right? Which is fine for that first chord. But check it out. With the bass line, I've got a C, and then I'm going to a low E, and then playing an F. And that F is going to be right after the second C9 chord. So that means I can't really finger it like that anymore, because the index has got to be down here. So what I'll simply do is use 2, 3, and 4 to play that C9 in advance. So basically the first C9 will be like this. And then as soon as I get off that C and go to the low E, I'm going to play the C9 like that, fingered 2, 3, 4. So those are these subtle little fingering changes that you're going to need to take a look at in order to facilitate a bass line moving it underneath it. So in super slow motion, it's my regular C9 fingering, and then off. Now I'm doing that pop there. And then the next step is just bouncing those fingers. So that's another independence exercise. The first time 1, 3, and 4 bouncing. Well, right, that's an elaboration on week 1's exercise. And then 2, 3, and 4 will pop. And when you put it all together, it'll be like... Take your time with that one and have fun, but what you really want to aim for in terms of your goal is to make it swing and have that real Kansas City jump. You know, picture Louis Jordan, all Basie, all of that great stuff, Western swing, and really make that pop with the chords. Have fun with that one. Okay, for the take it to the next level, this is just a real short passage that's more of a fingerstyle acoustic piece. And this is an excerpt from an original of mine. And again, like week 4, it puts everything together in terms of the left hand articulations and movement, as well as the right hand claw. So here we go. 1, 2, 3, and...